Chief of the Army Staff General Manoj Mukund Narwane has spoken out for the first time after the Jammu drone strike and drone sightings in and around Jammu. He did speak of the clear and present danger that's present. But did we anticipate the threat after seeing Islamic State terrorists and Houthi rebels use kamikaze drones against Yemeni forces or the Saudi oil pipeline and other installations? Are these Pakistan state-sponsored terrorist attacks, and are terrorists at this point of time a step ahead? Let's find out. I bring you this India Today exclusive. General, we have a very strong counter-terrorism grid in Jammu and Kashmir, but is this nature of warfare changing in terms of, so yes, as you've explained, we have multi-tiered grid in Jammu and Kashmir. They may be able to stop terrorists. How will they stop drones? How do we counter the threat of unmanned aerial vehicles in the hands of either state, non-state or state-supported non-state elements in this hybrid or grey zone warfare?
Well, the easy ability of drones, and in fact, you can even make it at home as a do-it-yourself project, definitely increases the complexity and the challenges that we have to deal with. We are seized of this problem, and we have put in place certain measures. I would not like to elaborate too much on all of them for obvious reasons, but all our troops on ground have been sensitized to this evolving threat, and we are developing capabilities to deal with that, whether by state-sponsored or by states themselves. We are developing the capabilities to deal with them, with this drone threat, both in the kinetic and in the non-kinetic realm. So I think this is a continuous battle. Over the centuries, this has always been the case. Capability is developed, another capability is developed to counter it. Then another capability goes further up. So this seesaw battles between drones and counter-drone technologies will continue. And this is how the character will keep changing, and we will have to keep adapting to this if we have to succeed.
General, you've been quoting General Julia Duhay speaking of victory, smiling on those who anticipate changes in the character of war. Is the use of drones in this hybrid war that change in the character of war? Did we anticipate it, General, or are we now trying to adapt?
Well, as you quite rightly mentioned, that the character of warfare has been changing continuously, and the advent of drones and counter-drone systems has radically altered the way we think and how we will be having to fight in the future. With their ease of availability, drones can be easily accessed and can be used by both state and non-state actors. So we will also have to factor this in as we go along and make our plans. But I would like to assure you that we are fully seized of this issue, and we are working towards making sure that we are not found wanting in this regard.
Like the terror attack that took place at the Jammu Air Base, can we prevent the next terror strike?
Drones will be increasingly used in all sorts of combat in the future, both by state and non-state actors. And we will have to factor this in all our future planning that we do. And as I mentioned in my address, we are catering for both the offensive and use of drones, as also focusing on the defensive measures or the counter-drone systems or measures that we need to adopt to prevent any attacks on our critical facilities by drones and their use whether by state or non-state actors.
Sir, you were speaking about big tech, Atmanirbhar Bharat, big data, artificial intelligence, all of this pieced together. What is the principal threat that we face? Is it hybrid warfare, grey zone warfare, counter-terror operations, or adversaries at borders, or a combination of both, all?
I think what you said in the end is what is most probable. We are now into the realm of multi-dimensional operations, or MDO, and across the whole spectrum of conflict. It is no longer that it will be only sub-conventional or conventional. Whenever there is a conflict in the future, it will be across the entire range that you just mentioned, and we will have to be ready to respond to each of these as it emerges, and not just be focusing on any one set of threats or capabilities. And that is going to be the future of warfare. It is going to be more abstract. It is going to be more volatile, uncertain, ambiguous. And that is where the challenge lies in preparing ourselves for the war of the future.
And to talk about this grey zone warfare, this hybrid warfare that our country faces, joining me on India First, our Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, former General Officer Commanding of the Chinar Corps in Srinagar, and India Today magazine's Executive Editor, Sandeep Unnithan. General Hasnain, you heard the Army Chief, your appreciation of the challenge and our response.
See, Gaurav, first of all, the Chief spoke his heart out. Very good interaction that you had with him. And this is a kind of a trend which always comes after after a lapse of a period of time. You see, you remember 1999, how things were, and suddenly the Fedayeen attacks, or so-called Fedayeen attacks, started.
Yes.
Thereafter, if you remember, in 2001, the suicide bomber suddenly appeared in Kashmir. And we had 2 or 3 suicide bomb attacks like that. And it changed the whole complexity of the manner in which operations were being conducted. So that is a given. Over a period of time, change will take place. The actors from the other side, the proxies, will make attempts to try and bring about transformation in the nature of conflict. We have to be alive to it. And as the Chief very correctly said, it is not conventional, it is not sub-conventional, it is hybrid. And hybrid, you'll include lots and lots of things. You'll include cyber, you'll include the whole aspects of grey zone warfare, which actually alludes to psychological warfare, very intense psychological warfare against your population and against your armed forces itself. So this drone attack which we have seen is essentially the beginning of a transformation in conflict. With the way I look at it, every civilian in all these combat zones is going to be a counter-drone warrior. You can't leave it to the security forces. You can't leave it to the police. Every single person is a counter-drone warrior. And therefore, technologies, non-technologies, all kinds of methodologies, standard operating procedures will have to be adapted. And this is what the Chief is talking about, how we have to change for the future.
Sandeep, we've been talking about kamikaze drones ever since the Islamic State terrorists and the Houthi rebels used these kamikaze drones, or suicide drones as they're called. But was our thinking that all of this is happening somewhere else? It's happening in West Asia. It's happening to some other army. It's happening to some other country. We've displayed swarm drones this Army Day. Are we prepared? Were we preparing? Or are we preparing only for conventional warfare, and this is hybrid grey zone warfare that's taken us by surprise?
Absolutely, Gaurav. This is hybrid grey zone warfare, and it's actually been changing over the decades. As General Hasnain mentioned, it was first the Fedayeen attacks, then you had suicide bombers, and now you have drones being used for pretty much the same thing. It's just an aspect of grey zone warfare. And Gaurav, I'd like to mention what the Chief left unsaid in his conversation with you. It's not just about the drone itself. You know, the drone is only a method of delivering the payload. let's not take our eyes away from the payload itself, which is what experts are telling us. It could be a shaped charge, it could be an explosively formed penetrator, which is very sophisticated explosive technology. This is a payload that drops and it has a contact proximity fuse that triggers off the explosive. This is not stuff that you and me can buy off the shelf like a drone. So, while drones have been around for about a decade,
yes.
the technology for, fashioning a payload of this nature and, dropping it from a drone, that calls for a very high degree of expertise. And this is the kind of expertise that only states have. And that's what we should be really worried about. The fact that you could have drone teams like this walking around vital areas, vital installations, targets within India, carrying drones with explosives of this nature.
And that's dangerous. That's extremely dangerous. And just now it's Jammu Air Base, very sensitive. Tomorrow it could be the national capital, it could be the financial capital, and all these areas have been targeted by Pakistani terrorists in the past. General, were we looking at swarm drones or drones to counter Pakistani tanks and artillery and Chinese tanks and artillery and other VAVPs of the adversary in conflict? Are we now dealing with terrorists being used by our adversaries and then using these drones? You've commanded your corps. There are many such VAVPs all along. How do you counter this threat? Just by being defensive, or will the enemy or the adversary have to be paid back and perhaps with interest?
See, Gaurav, there's a range of questions you've asked, and the last was very important. The aspect of you can't just leave this to defensive measures. You can't just have soft kills which are going on against these kind of targets, the drones coming in, etc. Ultimately, you have to pay back. We have learned this lesson the hard way over a period of time. You realize that in 2016, you hit back with the surgical strikes. You hit back with the Balakot strike in 2019, and you saw the effect of that. So obviously, what we are looking at is essentially a hit back. Once we have determined where exactly, how exactly is this entire threat is manifesting. Besides, having said that, let me tell you that the army and the armed forces as such, over the last 10 years, perhaps from the advent of the drone in Afghanistan, have been studying. All our institutions have been studying this. It's not something which has come out of a surprise. Yes. I'm surprised that there's a lot of literature going around with people saying that the army brass and the veterans have been suddenly, struck by this new form of warfare, and no one really knows too much about it. This is all a lot of poppycock. We have been studying this for the last 10, 12 years.
Yes.
Maybe this year you got the first taste of a practical demonstration on the Army Day. The aspect of swarming, which we saw. I agree that the influence of the Nagorno-Karabakh war between Armenia and Azerbaijan definitely had its effect, and we were all essentially looking at the conventional side. But the sub-conventional, the grey zone part of it has very much been there in the vision. And I can assure you the countermeasures also have been looked into, and as the chief very correctly said, he's not willing to expose and say as to what exactly is in the pipeline at the moment.
Absolutely, because if it gives plausible deniability to non-state, semi-state, state-backed actors across the line of control, the same plausible deniability remains when the adversary is stuck. But Sandeep, the big question at this point is the government mindset still defensive, that we'll spend billions of dollars protecting sensitive locations, and perhaps, from Ladakh to Lakshadweep, there will be thousands and thousands of these VAVPs? Or is the government very clear post Balakot? The chief did not say it, even though I asked him a very specific question on Balakot and whether that's the new template. But is the understanding that this is a game that others can also play?
Yeah, absolutely, Gaurav. And what you just mentioned is not something that the government will discuss openly, or indeed the chief is never going to mention the fact that they would be exploring other options as well. The fact is that you're looking at the use of drones in gray zone warfare, where there is a high degree of deniability.
Yes.
And the one thing that must never happen, Gaurav, is two things. The first is that you should never allow it to be normalized, because if you allow an attack like this to be normalized, then the next attack is going to be in Delhi. And that's how the deep state across the border works. They try it in one place and then they keep pushing the dagger to see how far they can keep pushing that envelope. And if you see the way, drones were being used for the last 2 years for
Yes.
dropping weapons, arms and ammunition across Punjab and in Jammu. I mean, there was a kind of a normalization of this, phenomenon of using drones to drop weapons. And
Very
it wasn't
pertinent
taken,
point.
I believe, with a kind of seriousness that we should have addressed it at that moment itself. Because as General Hasnain will tell you, it's only a matter of time before you step up from using a drone as a courier to turning it into a bomber. And the fact is that you have a deep state across which is constantly improvising, innovating terror and terror tactics. So this is
General-
something that absolutely should not be normalized, and we
Oh,
should not
absolutely.
make it into an excuse for going on a shopping spree and calling the companies of the world to come and start hawking technology. We should kind of fix our
Look for
priorities.
solutions in our own country.
look for
Let
solutions within the
IITs do
country.
it. Let DRDO do it. Let private sector do it. Let's not waste billions of dollars looking for technology, as you very rightly point out. But before I come to the next part of what the chief said about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir and then the LAC, General, I quickly want to take 30 seconds to seek your views. If an Air Force base has been targeted close to the hangar, next to our hepters, injuring airmen, was this an act of war, whether it was done by the state, semi-state, deep state, or by non-state actors? Was this an act of war?
See, Gaurav, your question is a very pertinent one, no doubt, but it will have many answers at this stage. You see, the proxies, the masters have both been smart. They've been at it for the last 30 years, so they've been very smart on the aspect of deniability. You have to accept the fact that also that normally under such circumstances, someone should have claimed it immediately, but no one did. No one did, and that's a smart thing that they're doing this time, unlike what happened with the Jaish-e-Mohammed claim, if you remember, in the case of Pulwama.
Yes.
So I think we have to hold our horses for the moment, because we are in the middle of a geopolitical change also which is taking place in the region, and we need not rush into things immediately. Obviously, people are taking advantage of this fact that there is a geopolitical change taking place, but we need to be a little careful while treading this path.
Fair enough. Let's now come to the next part of the conversation with General Manoj Mukund Narwane, Chief of the Army Staff, on the situation in Jammu and in Kashmir. Now, he said there's tremendous improvement after the talks between the Director Generals of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. Now, I asked him a very specific question. Was Pakistan trying to disrupt peace in Jammu and Kashmir, especially when the delimitation process is underway, when political activity is starting once again? Listen in to his response. So, will the US draw down in Afghanistan? Are we looking at a spike in tensions along the line of control or in the hinterland in coming months? And in your appreciation, terrorists using drones, does this mark a shift in tactics being used against India?
Well, over the past few months, in fact, ever since the ceasefire understanding between the DGMOs in February this year, the situation in J&K has seen a marked improvement, especially as far as terrorism is concerned. There has been little or no infiltration from across the LC, and the number of incidents, terror-related incidents in the valley have also seen a considerable decline. Of course, the odd incident of firing at some security force picket here and there, or the gunning down of some person in his village, these kind of incidents do continue, but overall, the sharp drop in all these parameters of violence have very clearly indicated that the Awam, the general population in Kashmir, is all for peace and development. And I think that going ahead, this is where we need to focus and make sure that we create the conditions which are conducive to peace and development.
Taliban and Pakistan, Pakistan state-sponsored terror. So you're saying there's a drop in terror. There is a drop in ceasefire violations that DGMO peace is holding. But then are drones then the new tactics that terrorists are adopting? Because here there is political activity and delimitation process that gets underway, General.
No, I'm sure that there would be some inimical elements and some elements who would not like peace to prevail in the valley. But what is very clear and what emerges is that post the ceasefire, all the parameters of violence have dropped. So there was definitely a linkage between the support that the terrorists got from across the border and the levels of violence in the Kashmir Valley. So that linkage is very well established, and consequent to the ceasefire, since there is a ceasefire, there's no longer any infiltration. Since there is no infiltration, the number of terrorists in the valley are lesser. Since the number of terrorists are lesser, the number of terrorist-related incidents are also seen a drop. So this is a very clear chain which is established of cause and effect. So, but as I mentioned earlier, there will always be elements who will try to sabotage the process of peace and development, but we will have to cater for that. And we, I think, have a very strong counter-terrorist and counter-infiltration grid in J&K, and our operations to that end to ensure peace and tranquility will continue.
General, you commanded your corps in Srinagar. What do you make of the peace at the line of control and in other parts of Jammu and Kashmir post the February DGMO talks? Is this a lull before the storm?
See, Gaurav, I can quote you many examples of the last 30 years when we have had peace on the line of control, peace within Kashmir itself in the hinterland, and something has happened thereafter to upset it all. But it will be unfair on my part to keep quoting this and thinking us ahead that this is going to happen. I think we are far better prepared today. That's the more important aspect. We are far better prepared today. We've also got a threat on our northern borders which we have to cater to. The ceasefire is working well. There is a level of frustration which is there among the stakeholders on the other side. The proxies, their masters, everyone. The FATF pressure on them, the American pressure, the pressure of Afghanistan, lots of things on them. With all this happening, they don't want to see their investment in Jammu and Kashmir slipping away from under their feet. So there will be efforts, at some stage there will be efforts to try and recapture that space. And this is what we are seeing, an initial attempt to try and transform the nature of the conflict. If something big still happens, it may not happen in the field of drones. It may just happen in the field of an IED somewhere. This may be very well a divergence for all of us. So it's best for us to be prepared comprehensively. And I think the chief has alluded to that we are far better prepared today to handle this.
He also spoke of MDO, multidimensional operations in the times ahead, Sandeep. And, as General Hasnain very rightly pointed out, we must look forward to peace. But the question is this deceptive? Pakistan, as General Hasnain was pointing out, perhaps wants to focus on the AFPAC border with the US drawdown underway. And once that AFPAC flank is sorted out, turn on the heat once again and turn the terror tap on once again. Is that the apprehension?
Absolutely, Gaurav. General Hasnain has hit the nail on the head. This is a lull before a storm, and GHQ Rawalpindi wouldn't want to have its attention divided on two fronts. It's as clear as that. We are looking at a very, very delicate situation in Afghanistan as the US and allied forces withdraw, the coalition forces withdraw from Afghanistan by September. And the Taliban is poised to take over large parts of the country. That's already happening. And from what we're hearing, it's Pakistan army officers in disguise fighting with the Taliban, alongside the Taliban. And they would like their entire attention to be focused on their western borders. And this is not the time for them to be worrying about the Indian border. That can wait. So this, as you correctly pointed out, is a lull before the storm. We have to wait and watch in the months ahead. I don't believe this is a permanent situation. While the army has a very strong CICT grid in place, and it's surely not the way it was in the past. We've traveled a great distance since then. But this is a lull, Gaurav, and I would really like to see how things are going to play out on the AFPAC border rather than the Indo-Pak LOC.
You know, because General Hasnain, as you know better, sir, our very strong three-grid security at the LOC, does that become completely infructuous, or barbed wire fences and high perimeter security walls in the face of this drone warfare? Again, Ramzan ceasefire of 2003 enabled Pakistan to pull out, was it 2 divisions from the line of control and put them on the AFPAC border? The terror infrastructure not dismantled then, not dismantled now. So is this peace at this border just to save Pakistan some fatalities on this border, as they suffer a number of fatalities on the AFPAC border? They've had fatalities, I think, just yesterday.
See, Gaurav, there's no doubt that with what is happening in Afghanistan, there is going to be an effect on the internal security of Pakistan itself. Right? They are preparing themselves, stabilizing their eastern front as far as the LOC is concerned. They don't want too many things happening here. Maybe just pinpricks of the nature which has happened with the drone attack. At the moment, this drone attack may not transform itself into swarms of attacks in any time in the near future. What I want you to remember, recall for our audience, is the fact that when Operation Zarb-e-Azb was launched in 2014,
yes,
22 of the 67 brigades of the Pakistan Army were launched onto the Western Front and internal security.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure the Pakistan Army doesn't want a situation like that to be repeated once again, because that makes it very, very tenuous as far as the line of control is concerned.
Oh, absolutely. Let me now come to that final part of the conversation with General Narwane on the situation along the line of actual control. And this was a big statement coming from the Chief of the Army Staff when he said that the situation at the LAC at this moment is normal after disengagement. He then went on to say that both sides, both India and China, have adhered to the disengagement at North Bank and South Bank of Pangong Tso. But what about the road ahead at other friction points? Let's find out. General, if I may shift to the situation along the line of actual control, what's the current situation at the LAC, and especially at the friction points, and in your appreciation, sir, the road ahead?
Well, the situation on the LAC has been normal for quite some time now, ever since the disengagement took place, again, which had happened in February this year, from the northern and southern banks of the Pangong Tso, as well as the Kailash ranges. And since then, both sides have strictly adhered in letter and spirit to the disengagement that was agreed upon. We are engaging with the Chinese at various levels, at the political level, at the diplomatic level, and of course at the military level, and in the military level also at different levels, whether it be the senior highest military commander down to the delegation leader. So this talk between us is going on, and this has helped build trust between the two sides, and going ahead, we are sure that we will be able to resolve all the remaining issues.
Sandeep, General Narwane spoke of trust building. This is the Chinese army that 1 year ago did Galwan and used Stone Age weapons against the Indian army. The buffer zones, do they still remain? What does trust on ground actually mean?
Well, Gaurav, it was trust until last year, until the Chinese PLA moved in with those two divisions, and now it's going to be trust but verify. So there's a very big shift in the army's thinking of what the situation on the LAC is, and this is going to remain the case in the years to come, because I don't think the Indian Army is now going to be lulled into any kind of complacency with the LAC, the way the situation now. We've seen how things, matters escalated so rapidly, despite the fact that there was a huge bonhomie between the leadership of both India and China.
Yes.
These things on the ground, and it was very clear because from my conversation with the leadership in the military leadership on our side, this kind of an operation, Gaurav, could not have been authorized but from the topmost levels of the Chinese government.
And
we
is
know
the
who that is.
topmost leadership at the Chinese level actually shocked by India's response? Why am I saying this, General Hasnain? Because look at that rapid Chinese infrastructure build-up, whether it's happening in Tibet or in Xinjiang. Is this an indication that what China set out to achieve last year couldn't be achieved because of what the brave Indian soldiers did at Galwan and the QPQ operations? Is that why China is now building longer runways, bringing in more aircraft, building in additional military bases, rocket batteries being brought in? What's China's thinking in your appreciation, sir?
See, Gaurav, to answer the first part of what Sandeep also answered, I don't think the chief used the correct word. I would like to criticize my chief, but I think he used the wrong word, trust. Trust is not being built up. It's confidence which is being built up. Trust is too strong a word. It has taken years to build the trust which the Chinese destroyed at Galwan on the 15th, 16th night of June last year. Having said that, I agree with you 100%. Galwan shook them. Galwan actually shook them. And thereafter, the QPQ operations on 29th, 30th of August 2020 shook them further. The fact that we were now overlooking the Moldo garrison, the headquarters of the PLA's entire forces in eastern Ladakh, we were overlooking it and threatening it, yet we didn't do anything. This really shook them very hard. And therefore, the Chinese are still slighted, although they agreed as a QPQ again to withdraw from Pangong Tso, from the north and south of Pangong Tso, the agreement that we came to.
Okay.
But despite that, they are still feeling slighted.
Yes.
You see with today what Xi Jinping has said, that the Chinese will never again ever be under pressure from anyone in the years to come. You see, the Chinese have built an image about themselves. That image is what got shattered in these two events in 2020. And that's the reason why what you're seeing, the build-up which is taking place there, it may never lead to war tomorrow. But the Chinese will always continue to show their eyes to you. They will continue to coerce you. Warfare diplomacy will continue to be employed. That's the Chinese way.
It is, but are they now seeing the Indian way? Speak very softly, speak very politely, but carry a big stick that even they have seen. Now, it's still work in progress. We will continue to report the story. We have Sandeep Unnithan, Shiv Arur, Abhishek Bhalla, Manjeet Negi, the biggest team actually covering events on ground, and we will continue to do so. General Hasnain, as always, many thanks for joining me. Sandeep, many thanks for joining me. A quick break.